So when EA revealed just how poorly Dragon Age the Veilguard sold, how woefully it underwhelmed compared to sales expectations, it was pretty clear that Bioware was in trouble. I mean, they've just had such a string of failures from Mass Effect Andromeda to then Anthem, and now Dragon Age the Veilguard. There were already early signs that the game wasn't doing gangbusters. The all-time peak concurrent player number on Steam here, while relatively high, it's not as high as we've seen from far more successful titles. We saw early signs based on what analysts have been saying, with folks like Matt Piscatella having reported that based on early sales, things are looking good but not great, and how Dragon Age the Veilguard didn't reach the launch week sales levels of either Final Fantasy VII Rebirth or Dragon's Dogma 2. We had seen the game go on sale just a month after launch, which doesn't typically happen to a successful AAA game, even during Black Friday. And then on January 22nd, 2025, EA provided the official report where they said that Dragon Age engaged approximately 1.5 million players during the quarter, down nearly 50% from the company's expectations. Folks have noted that the exact word used here wasn't even sold, it was engaged. So it could be that 1.5 million players doesn't represent 1.5 million units sold, that the actual sales could be less, and that a significant portion of that engagement number is made up of folks who maybe had subscription from the free trial that came out for the game. Doesn't necessarily mean they stuck around or that they bought the full product. So we don't know the full scope of what this 1.5 million players number is, but even at its best, where if they happen to sell 1.5 million units, it would still be underwhelming, especially when you compare those numbers to what past entries have done. Prior to Veilguard, the worst selling entry was what was then the black sheep, Dragon Age 2, which sold 2 million units. And I mean, Veilguard sales numbers pale in comparison to the previous entry's sales numbers, Inquisition, which sold 12 million units. And then pair that with the departure of Dragon Age the Veilguard director Corinne Bush, and you've got a situation that just optics-wise is very poor. Now, project director and executive producer at Bioware, Michael Gamble, who's leading the next Mass Effect game, tried to assure that things are good at work, but this was prior to recent news that there have been layoffs taking place within Bioware. While as far as we know now, Mass Effect is still in development, who knows how that will change as EA's disposition towards Bioware and whether it is something that they want to continue investing in is called into question with just the string of failures that we've seen Bioware come out with. Now, Bioware itself on January 29th, 2025, released the following update, published this post in which they emphasize that the current shifts happening within the studio is all part of trying to make everything more agile. It's more restructuring, and that it doesn't indicate anything bad, that the next Mass Effect game is still in development. But I feel like reading between the lines, it's obvious that not all is well at Bioware. So it reads right here, today we're turning towards the future and preparing for the next chapter in Bioware's story. As we announced in August 2023, we're changing how we build games to meet the needs of our upcoming projects and hold ourselves to the highest quality standards. Now that Dragon Age the Veilguard has been released, a core team at Bioware is developing the next Mass Effect game under the leadership of veterans from the original trilogy, including Mike Gamble, Preston Watamaniuk, Derek Watts, Parrish Lee, and others. In keeping with our fierce commitment to innovation during the development and delivery of Mass Effect, we have challenged ourselves to think deeply about delivering the best experience to our fans. We're taking this opportunity between full development cycles to reimagine how we work at Bioware. Given this stage of development, we don't require support from the full studio. We have incredible talent here at Bioware, and so we have worked diligently over the past few months to match many of our colleagues with other teams at EA that had open roles that were a strong fit. So this all makes it look very positive, like, hey, everything's okay behind the scenes. Some staff's being moved around since at this stage of Mass Effect's development or the next Mass Effect's development, we don't need everyone. We don't need all hands on deck. So in the meantime, those folks can go and work on other stuff is kind of how this is being presented. And separately, former Bioware veteran Mark Dara actually released a video on his own channel, since he's kind of a bit of a free agent. He decided to talk about what he expects will be next for Bioware and talked about how Mass Effect isn't ready to suddenly have a team of 250, 300 people working on it, And so we're seeing folks who worked on Veilguard move to other parts of EA, and how this might actually be a good thing since Bioware can now really focus for the first time ever on just one project and making that the best possible instead of spreading themselves too thin, working on multiple projects at the same time. But with all that said, when you look at how EA is starting to trim Bioware, you can certainly see that Veilguard's disappointing financial performance did have some kind of negative impact on the studio, and it is forcing EA to start whittling Bioware down in preparation for the possibility that maybe Mass Effect 5 will also not sell gangbusters or enough to make up for Bioware just not having delivered time and time again from a financial perspective. Here's a report from IGN in which it was highlighted how a number of Bioware developers took to social media to say they were now leaving the studio. Unlike Corinne Bush, who at least said in a statement that she was leaving voluntarily, a lot of these folks did not leave voluntarily. They were laid off. Here is a Gaming Leaks and Rumors post that compiles all of the folks who worked on Veilguard who have posted on social media that they've been laid off, that they're no longer with Bioware, including lead writer Trick Weeks, lead editor Karen West Weeks, narrative editor Ryan Cornier, Bioware producer Jennifer Chevry-Cott, associate game producer Daniel Steed, senior product manager Lena Anderson, and senior systems designer Michelle Flam. There are some folks who have moved from Bioware to other parts of EA, like senior writer Cheryl Chi, who wrote Dragon Age's Liliana, Isabella, Blackwell, and Harding. This individual was moved to EA Motive, but many others were not so lucky. In fact, games journalist Mike Straw here from Insider Gaming was keen on emphasizing that I was told by a few sources that the layoffs were at least a few dozen people, and apparently the layoffs may not be over. There could be more, according to Mike here in this post. So yeah, this whole Bioware statement here makes it seem like everything is sunshine and rainbows, and like this is all just a natural part of game development, but they make no mention of the layoffs. It feels like they're intentionally trying to bury that under the carpet as to not create negative optics. And just the way some of the developers are talking about IPs like the recently failed Dragon Age. So right here we have Cheryl Chi, who posted the following on Blue Sky. Dragon Age isn't dead. There's fiction, there's art, there's the connections we made through the games and because of the games. Technically, EA/Bioware owns the IP, but you can't own an idea no matter how much they want to. Dragon Age isn't dead because it's yours now, which, look, is a nice sentiment, but it basically sounds like how you would describe someone who recently passed away. It sounds like a eulogy. It sounds like how you would say, hey, look, this family member, they're gone from this world, but they'll live in our hearts. It's got like that kind of vibe where it might as well be a mourning for Dragon Age while trying to, keep things hopeful by saying, well, it'll still live within all of us, which is nice, but it is indicative of an IP that probably won't be back for a long time. I think that's how badly Veilguard underwhelmed financially for EA. And them using terminology like, this is all about making a studio more agile, more focused and whatnot. I've seen that language used before by corporations and their executives who are doing their absolute damnness to justify layoffs in the eyes of the public and make it look like it's a positive move, when what they've really done is lost talent and lost the preservation of like built up experience. This kind of turnover is really unhealthy for a studio, because you've got a team that doesn't retain knowledge, but one where knowledge is constantly refreshed and experience is constantly refreshed. Chiming into all this is Michael Dowse, aka Cromwell on social media, who is the publishing director over at Larian Studios. He first of all wanted to emphasize that, for all those who are reporting that developers have left Bioware, left is the wrong terminology. Those folks were laid off. And then he talked about why this kind of layoff that feels very like an impulsive executive decision that was meant for short-term financial cuts, why that is going to be a bad thing long-term, discussing the fact that retention of institutional knowledge and that being key for future projects. This kind of high turnover means that you kind of don't get a very cohesive team. You don't really have a group of veterans who've worked on something for so long that they become masters of it. You kind of refresh that institutional knowledge constantly, which is why when a lot of people say like, yes, the name Bioware is there, but it's not really the same Bioware, why there's a lot of truth to that. It's just so many people have left And talent keeps getting refreshed so much because of the way the games industry handles layoffs and turnover, that the long-term retention of institutional knowledge is deeply compromised. As Michael says here, it's nothing but cost-cutting in the most brutal sense. It's always people lower down the food chain that suffer when it's clearly strategy higher up the food chain that's causing the problem. And so, yeah, the general sentiment out there right now is either Bioware will get shut down before Mass Effect 5 is even released if things are bad enough financially for EA with other projects failing that they have to make significant cuts. If the company ever comes to that point, I think there's little doubt that Bioware will be somewhere at the top of the list in terms of what they will end up ditching and sacrificing for, the longevity of investor confidence in EA and whatever. Best case scenario is that they will allow Bioware one more chance to make Mass Effect a massive success, but for that game to save Bioware, I think it has to do extremely well. It has to be a blowout success. Just selling good is not good enough. It has to sell gangbusters. And so there's a lot of pressure, I think, at Bioware to deliver with Mass Effect 5, not just in terms of critical reception, but just making it something that will appeal to a wide enough audience, or it'll ignite the fire and hype within the gaming community enough for it to become, Inquisition's level of success, which again sold like 12 million units. I think that's what Mass Effect 5 needs to be for EA to feel confident in Bioware being a long-term aspect of all the things under EA's umbrella. Because currently Bioware has been nothing but kind of a bit of a money sink for EA and executives. And I'm already starting to see the early signs of a studio that is on the chopping block. And we'll see whether EA feels merciful enough and does want to see Mass Effect 5 come out, or if they will sooner than later decide that Bioware has had enough chances and have failed to deliver numerous occasions continuously enough that it's just not worth keeping them around anymore. I honestly, at this stage, I would not be shocked if we did not see Mass Effect 5 release, though I hope, Bioware gets the chance to. But that really will be the last chance for Bioware at best. Or at the very least, that's one man's take. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the recent structural shifts within Bioware, the layoffs that, EA and Bioware refuse to talk about but are being reported by journalists about. And what you think the future holds for Bioware. Do you think they'll get to release Mass Effect 5, or do you think Veilguard was the nail in the coffin? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.